Ladies and gentlemen, there is a battle many people are fighting that doesn't show up on hospital scans or in blood reports. It's not visible to the naked eye, yet it causes real damage. It's the battle in mind. Today, I want to educate and enlighten you about something most people dismiss or misunderstand: the crucial signs of a spiritual attack on your mind. You see, your mind is the control tower of your life. Every thought, every decision, every conviction begins there. And when the enemy wants to take you down, he doesn't always come with a sword or fire. He often comes subtly through thoughts, impressions, and emotional manipulation. My friends, a spiritual attack on the mind is not something to ignore or tolerate. It must be discerned, confronted, and cast down. You don't win this war with willpower. You win it with wisdom, with the word, and with spiritual warfare. So I challenge you, guard your mind, sharpen your discernment. Don't just treat the symptoms, identify the source. When your thoughts shift from peace to torment, from clarity to chaos, from purpose to passivity, take a stand. You are not crazy and you are not alone. You're under attack. But the good news is, victory is still available to those who fight with knowledge and faith. One of the earliest and most subtle signs of a spiritual attack is mental confusion. This is not the ordinary kind of confusion caused by lack of sleep or information. This is a deep, persistent fog that clouds your reasoning, affects your decision-making, and causes you to question things you were once absolutely certain about. It's like trying to navigate through a thick fog where nothing is clear, and even simple decisions feel overwhelming. Confusion is a tool the enemy uses to disconnect you from truth and distort your perception. It creates internal noise that drowns out the voice of wisdom, leaving you second-guessing your every move. You begin to wonder, am I doing the right thing? Did I hear God correctly? Should I go forward or stay still? This confusion opens the door to double-mindedness. Now, double-mindedness is a dangerous spiritual state. It's not just about being indecisive, it's about being spiritually unstable. Scripture says in James 1:8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's a powerful statement. When a person is double-minded, they're caught between two thoughts, two opinions, or two spiritual influences. One moment they believe, the next moment they doubt. One day they feel full of faith, the next they are riddled with uncertainty. And this instability affects every area of life: faith, relationships, finances, even health, because where the mind goes, the life follows. This attack on the mind doesn't happen overnight. It often starts with small seeds, tiny thoughts that slip in unnoticed. Maybe it's a subtle suggestion that you're not capable, a faint idea that you're off track, a whisper that questions your value or your calling. Over time, these thoughts begin to multiply and intensify until your mental space becomes a battlefield of competing voices. Mental confusion also tends to isolate people. When the mind is under attack, a person often withdraws from wise counsel, avoids community, and begins to lean into their own confused reasoning. They may start to lose focus, make impulsive decisions, or delay actions they should take immediately. In some cases, people even begin to entertain false doctrine or strange ideas that are completely disconnected from their previous understanding of truth. What's most deceptive about this kind of attack is that it doesn't feel like an enemy coming in. It feels like you. That's why many don't recognize it. But let me tell you clearly, not every thought that enters your mind originated from you. Some are sent to derail your destiny, and if you don't take those thoughts captive, they will take you captive. Understanding that confusion and double-mindedness are not just emotional states, but spiritual strategies is the first step to overcoming them. When you recognize that your clarity, focus, and conviction are being targeted, you can rise up and reclaim your mental ground through truth, prayer, and spiritual authority. Another crucial sign that your mind is under spiritual attack is the sudden rise of overwhelming fear and anxiety. This isn't an ordinary nervousness or a natural concern over a situation. This is a deep, consuming fear that grips the heart, clouds the mind, and cripples your ability to move forward. It may come without warning, often without a clear cause, and it settles in like a fog you can't seem to shake. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a spiritual force. It's a weapon designed to neutralize faith, paralyze decision-making, and disconnect you from trust in God's promises. Fear often enters the mind as a whisper of uncertainty. And what if this goes wrong? What if you fail? What if you fail? What if you lose everything? It may sound like your own thoughts, but it carries the weight of spiritual intimidation. Its goal is not to warn you, it's to control you. Anxiety, the close companion of fear, brings its own torment. It causes racing thoughts, sleepless nights, and irrational expectations of disaster. You start imagining worst-case scenarios even in the calmest situations. You may become hyper-vigilant, constantly trying to plan for outcomes you can't control. Anxiety convinces the mind to prepare for failure instead of trusting for victory. And the more space you give it, the more territory it claims in your mind. This fear-driven mindset often masks itself in logic or caution. It may sound reasonable. I just want to be prepared. I just want to make sure I'm safe. But behind that mask is a spiritual influence sent to erode your peace. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So when fear begins to dominate your thinking, it is clear that something foreign is operating in your mental space. Many people under this form of attack begin to retreat. They pull back from opportunities, delay important decisions, or stop pursuing what they know is right. Fear convinces them that the risk is too great, that the threat is too real, and that failure is inevitable. And once fear takes root, it gives birth to doubt, doubt in God's protection, doubt in their calling, doubt in their future. What makes this attack so dangerous is how personalized it feels. It wraps itself in your own voice and your own thoughts and convinces you that it's wisdom. But true wisdom does not come with torment. Fear does. That's how you know the difference. Overwhelming fear and anxiety are not just emotional struggles. They are spiritual battles. They are signals that the enemy is attempting to infiltrate your peace and seize control of your focus. And unless they are confronted and cast down, they will hinder your growth, stifle your purpose, and distort your perception of reality. Recognizing the spiritual root of fear is the first step to defeating it. A deeply telling sign of a spiritual attack on the mind is the sudden and unexplained loss of spiritual desire or focus. This is not about a gradual spiritual decline or a busy schedule getting in the way. This is a sharp, often subtle shift that leaves you disinterested in the things of God, where prayer feels burdensome, worship feels empty, and reading the Word becomes more of a chore than a joy. This shift usually doesn't start loudly. It begins with small interruptions to your spiritual routine. When missed prayer time turns into days of silence, when skipped Bible reading becomes a pattern. Over time, what once brought life, peace, and clarity now feels distant and disconnected. And the tragedy is, many people do not realize this change is not just personal, it's spiritual. The mind, when under attack, becomes a battlefield for distraction. The enemy doesn't always come to take something from you. Sometimes he just shifts your focus. He introduces mental clutter, endless scrolling, unnecessary conversations, overwhelming busyness, until your spiritual attention becomes diluted. Suddenly, your priorities change, and the hunger for the presence of God fades into the background. You might still talk about God, still attend services, still look spiritual on the outside, but inwardly, there's a dryness, a dullness that cannot be ignored. This is a critical tactic of the enemy, because he knows that once your spiritual desire is compromised, your discernment becomes weak. You stop recognizing what is from God and what is not. You begin to tolerate what you used to resist. Your convictions start to loosen and your spiritual vision blurs. It becomes easier to justify sin easier to blend in, easier to coast spiritually without noticing you've drifted. And this loss of focus affects more than just your personal devotion. It begins to impact your purpose, your passion, and your posture in life. Makes clarity about your calling. You become less engaged in your assignment. You operate out of routine instead of revelation. This is how the enemy neutralizes effectiveness, not by removing your gifts, but by removing your drive to use them. When spiritual desire fades, the mind becomes vulnerable to deception. The truth no longer excites you. Conviction no longer stirs you. Passion no longer fuels you. This is not just emotional fatigue. It is spiritual seduction. It's the enemy's quiet way of pulling you away from intimacy with God without sounding an alarm. So when you begin to feel that disconnect, that numbness, that fading interest in the things that once fed your soul, pay attention. It is a sign that the enemy is tampering with the atmosphere of your mind, and unless it is addressed with urgency, you will find yourself spiritually present but mentally absent, going through the motions with no fire left inside. One of the most destructive signs of a spiritual attack on your mind is the emergence of negative thought cycles and patterns of self-sabotage. This is more than just having a bad day or thinking low of yourself once in a while. This is a consistent, repetitive cycle of toxic thoughts that play on loop in your mind, slowly eating away at your identity, confidence, and purpose. These thought cycles often come in the form of inner accusations, statements like, "I'm not good enough," "Nothing ever works out for me," "I always mess things up," "God must be disappointed in me." They are not random. They are targeted, strategic. These thoughts are arrows launched into your mind to keep you stuck in shame, guilt, and fear. Over time, these thoughts become part of your inner narrative. You begin to see yourself not through the lens of truth, but through the filter of failure. And once that perception becomes distorted, your actions start to reflect it. You pull away from opportunities. You refuse to step out in faith. You disqualify yourself from blessings God already prepared for you. Not because he said no, but because you believed the lie that said you weren't worthy. This is where self-sabotage begins. The enemy doesn't always need to destroy your life. He just convinces you to do it yourself. He plants a lie, then lets you repeat it until you act on it. You start making decisions that go against your best interest. You compromise on your standards. You settle for less, not because there isn't more, but because you don't believe you deserve it. These thought cycles also create emotional instability. You may find yourself constantly overthinking, replaying past mistakes, or expecting the worst even when things are going well. It becomes difficult to trust others and even harder to trust God. You feel stuck in a mental loop that drains your energy and clouds your vision. This is not just overthinking. This is spiritual interference. One of the enemy's greatest goals is to get you to come into agreement with his lies. Because once you believe a lie, you begin to live it. If he can get you to think you are defeated, you will stop fighting. If he can get you to think you are unloved, you will reject love when it comes. If he can convince you that you're broken beyond repair, you will never pursue healing. The power of these negative thought cycles lies in their repetition. They don't come once. They keep returning, often in quiet moments when you are alone, vulnerable, or tired. That's why they feel so real. But the truth is, they are not facts. They are assignments. Assignments sent to dismantle the truth God has spoken over your life. To overcome them, you must first recognize them as spiritual in nature. You don't reason with them. You confront them. You replace the lie with the truth. You declare what God has said over what fear says. Because until you change the pattern in your mind, you will keep sabotaging what God is trying to build in your life. What we've explored today is not just information. It is revelation. The mind is a battlefield, and whether you realize it or not, the war is ongoing. The signs of spiritual attack on your mind: confusion, fear, spiritual disconnection, and toxic thought cycles are not to be ignored, dismissed, or treated as normal. These are indicators that something deeper is at work. You were not created to live in mental chaos. You were not designed to walk through life anxious, paralyzed by fear, or disconnected from your divine purpose. Your mind is sacred ground. And if the enemy is fighting that hard to infiltrate it, that should tell you just how powerful your thoughts truly are. But here's the truth. You are not powerless. You have the authority to confront every lie, cast down every false imagination, and break every stronghold that tries to take residence in your thinking. You have been given spiritual weapons, not carnal ones, to tear down what the enemy builds in the unseen places of your life. The Word of God is your sword, prayer is your shield, worship is your atmosphere, and truth is your foundation. So today let this be a wake-up call. No more passive thinking, no more agreeing with the lies, no more surrendering your peace, your clarity, your focus, or your identity. It's time to fight back, not just emotionally, but spiritually. Protect your mind like the treasure it is. Guard your thoughts like your destiny depends on it, because it does. When you recognize the signs of spiritual attack, don't retreat. Respond. And as you respond, let the truth of God renew your mind, restore your strength, and realign your vision. Victory doesn't begin with changing your surroundings. It begins with reclaiming your thoughts. Stay alert, stay grounded, stay filled. And never forget, a transformed mind is the first step to a transformed life.